Matt, you've been on quite a roller coaster of jobs lately. I mean, first you're working at Battle State Games. You get let go because of what you did with the $250 thing.
Yeah.
And you get hired by Sony, which I was so happy for you, dude. And then you started denying the game sale in regions that didn't support PSN. You get let go for that again.
Yeah.
But now you've been picked up by the guys who make Arena Breakout Infinite, right? You know, that new Tarkov-like shooter.
Oh, I'm well aware.
Yeah, and you're now in charge of the asset team there. So you handle all the assets that game makes, and including weapon models and any sort of assets that could maybe potentially be stolen from other games directly. I just wanted to commend you on your work that you're doing there. I hear you're saving them a ton of money on weapon asset modeling and just general in-game modeling, and even some of the code. I think you're kind of just somehow it appears and you're like, I don't ask me where I got it from, but what?
I just want to say, I'm just very inspired by other forms of media, and I take direct inspiration and I, wear it on my sleeve.
Yeah. Well, you just been hitting it out of the park lately.
I really have.
I'm glad that you keep getting hired after the crazy stuff that's going on here. But you know what? There was a spot for you at Arena Breakout Infinite. Welcome to the Level With Me podcast, everybody. The weird gaming / something podcast where myself and Matimio talk about games, current events, life, what we like to watch on TV or read. And this week, man, the drama just doesn't slow down in gaming lately. I don't know what's going on this summer. People are bored or something. They're just throwing shade on the internet.
It's summer already. I thought we were still in spring.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
It is getting hot though.
It's hot outside, man. Yeah, let's talk about
and
the
allergies
weather.
If you can't tell, my eyes are a little poofy. I am messed up right now. I can't get rid of it.
I want to get those allergy shots. You just have to take like 10 different prescribed medications before they'll consider giving you shots.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I just gotta go through that list.
Though, if it gets rid of the allergies, holy hell, it's miserable.
Forever. Now, to come back to our dumb intro for this show, there's been a little bit of drama between Battle State Games, the creator of Escape from Tarkov, and I think it's like what is their studio? More Fun Studios? That's a terrible name for the guys who make...
It's a great name.
All right.
Well, fun.
More fun. More better. I don't know what they are. Anyway, they make Arena Breakout Infinite, the totally not Tarkov free-to-play game which I do want to talk
about, other than, what you're about to talk about.
We'll get into it. So the creator of Escape from Tarkov tweeted out an image of I think it's like an AK receiver from one of their weapon models. And the polygons, the geometry of the guns are identical with the ones from Arena Breakout Infinite. And I can say, as somebody who does 3D modeling, that just, it's not like, even if the shapes are the same, the way you build them almost certainly will not be a 100% matchup. So either they bought the same assets, although he said that they modeled everything in-house, painstakingly made it all in-house. And that they've been arguing that a bunch of the in-game code as well from Tarkov has made its way into Arena Breakout. Now, again, this is just throwing around rumors on Twitter, so none of this is confirmed. But it doesn't look great, and Arena Breakout Infinite is not directly refuting it as far as I could tell. I was trying to search through their tweets and see if they had denied it specifically, but they more were like making vague statements about like, oh yeah, this is BS type stuff, but not really.
Well, of course they're not going to want to admit to straight up just copying.
But I couldn't find anything where they said like we definitely made this model on our own or anything like that. But it just seems like, the really funny thing to this was I retweeted what they put there and said, what do you guys think about this? And somebody showed the graphic art for Escape from Tarkov. You know, the guy that's got that kind of like big beard and
sure.
Okay. Yeah. It's like cover art on something for Escape from Tarkov. It's the guy from that Viking show. They just copied and pasted his face into the Tarkov thing, and they're like, "Oh, you mean this kind of like ripping of assets?" So like basically, both companies.
It's hard to sympathize with Tarkov in a lot of respects, but at the same time, two wrongs don't make a right.
No, they don't. It is just, man, it's like it's a Russian company versus a Chinese company, and they're both stealing stuff, and you're like, all right, guys, like have fun with that.
Someone said, and once again unverified, but there were hackers, which the most trustworthy source here,
elite hackers,
right, went into the code for Breakout, and apparently the Scav AI is very similar to the Scav AI from Tarkov, but I did notice Scavs will like jump and run and like mantle and stuff like that compared to Scavs in Tarkov, which will never jump. So there's got to be some differences here and there, or unless maybe I was just going against players and didn't realize that they were player Scavs. That could also be. But I
mean, you could. So I'm not a programmer. I do work with a programmer and like to think I can communicate with programmers, but I don't write code, so I don't know. I believe Arena Breakout, I think it's Unreal. Arena Breakout Infinite engine. What engine do they run on? Because Tarkov is Unity, I believe, right?
Yes. It's one of the reasons why everyone thinks the game is just struggling, because they're using a Unity that just is not up to snuff for what they're trying to go for.
Yeah, I thought they were using Unreal. So some code, I can't even see what engine they're using. Did they hide it somewhere?
You think it'd be front and center.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll come back to that. But you can't just like copy code from one game into another and be like, enter. And then
it just works.
No, it doesn't work like that. That said, there absolutely is a benefit to looking at the way another game was coded and being like, oh, this is a really smart way, because within programming languages, you can still output the same operations into whatever output function you need in that game. So as long as the operation is kind of more or less doing what you need it to do, then you can just be like, well, instead of it outputting to Tarkov Scav, we're outputting it to Breakout Scav, You would have to do a lot of trial and error and troubleshooting with it, but for sure it could save you some time, and it would not surprise me if a lot of this kind of stuff is being done all over the industry in general. I mean,
programmers are constantly taking from other programmers. Like that's literally just being a programmer, but not to the point where you're literally, copy and pasting, like you said, with assets and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's what the asset store is for. It's where people can go, here's my bit of code or my bit of sequence that I put together. I'll sell it to you for $10. It's usually super cheap. And then you're like, cool, now I have a segment that does the thing that I need it to. But again, those things you buy at the asset store, you don't just drag and drop and then it's good to go. Most of the time. Some of them do, but the vast majority of the time you put it in and you're like, okay, now let me rework all the stuff around it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's not looking great because Arena Breakout Infinite looks very similar to Tarkov in many ways. The UI itself, you're just like, wait, what game is? Yeah, yeah. I played it briefly, enough to make a YouTube video the day after it launched,
I played it for about 12 to 14 hours.
And what's the verdict?
I liked it.
Yeah.
Because it's Tarkov, but with actual quality of life and a little bit more casual friendly. Compared to Tarkov.
Yeah.
So
free to play, baby. It's a big difference from $250 for a fighting chance,
yeah. Well, I mean, you don't need $250 to have a fighting chance, but I hear it's easy jokes. So it literally like 100% every mechanic that you can think of. If you play Escape from Tarkov, you are going to be very, very comfortable in Arena Breakout Infinite. Can I just quickly say that one of the worst game titles, it's just words thrown at a wall. Like they just had like a dart and they were just throwing like, okay, we need 3 words, let's go. Besides the point. So you go in with loot that you are risking. They have a secure
infinite,
container.
though, Matt.
Infinite, yes.
You can play it forever.
So you go in, loot, you're risking your loot, you gather loot, you take out scabs, there's other players, you take that loot out to an extract, and you survive. That's the whole entire gameplay loop. There's quests just like in Tarkov as well, where you're having to go to certain locations and doing certain things. But it's got like actual quality of life that's elevated, I think, in a lot of ways over Tarkov. And it's just like, why isn't Tarkov doing this stuff?
Yeah.
Like a map.
It was
like
accessible.
You actually have a map.
Yeah, that was my favorite thing about it is if you download Tarkov and you load it up for the first time without like a friend holding your hand, you don't know what to do. The game doesn't tell you what to do. The UI is atrocious. You have no idea like what vendors you need to be like working with or any of that stuff. You're just like, I guess I'll spawn into a map, and then you just get like gunned down. You're like,
and what's
am
cool
I playing?
Is especially when you're like in your inventory and you're trying to like load into a game, it'll be like, hey, you don't have any pistol rounds. And you're like, oh, I actually didn't mean to bring in a pistol because that was from the last round. I picked it off a guy. Let me take that out of my inventory really quickly. Or, hey, you don't have any bandages. Are you sure you want to join? And it's like little hand-holding stuff like that isn't really that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, but it just gives you, like, as for a new player, just that little bit of like, oh, I completely forgot that because this isn't my genre. I'm not used to this, and it's lovely.
I like the medical tutorial stuff where it's just like,
they also streamlined it too.
Yeah, they tell you what you need to use depending on your type of injury, and that way you don't have to have military training or pretend like you do to understand how to properly like heal the right type of leg wound or
they also have a keybind
or something. Yeah,
they have one keybind that will like it will prioritize what it thinks that you need. So if like your character is bleeding, it will, and then you're taking damage, it will first go after the bleed, then it will go after like the health. Or if you need like a splint, it will go for the stuff like that. Actually, I don't think there's splints in the game. But yeah, it will.
I thought
like
that was kind of.
I
like that because really there isn't much gain from the knowledge curve of that system, because ultimately you just need to bring in the right types of medication, and then you need to use them in the correct order. And as long as you know that some of those things are going to take longer than others, and you have a little bit of a knowledge curve to say, hey, I'm going to stave off some of this bleeding and health loss with medication before I do the proper heal because I need to finish this firefight or whatever. That gives you a little bit of knowledge curve there, but otherwise, who really wants that knowledge curve in a game that's mostly about like listening and figuring out where guys go? It's like, no, you have to know the medicine thing. You're like, why? I don't know, because it's cool. We can role play.
The one thing I did think of for Tarkov in terms of the map, I love the fact that there's a map in this because you can actually see your extractions and you know where you're going. And that is nice because it's when you're new and you have to reference a map and you're just like, I have no idea where I am. How is this even helping? It doesn't help. So you just don't know where you are. But the thing about that is those early, days of Tarkov where you're learning the maps, it really feels more authentic because you don't know where you are and you're just trying to survive. And so the world feels like you could go anywhere. But when you have a map, you're like, oh, I can't go over there. I know I can't go over there because there's a map, right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I understand the immersive appeal of not having a map because it really does train you to look at your environment and surroundings. However, with these maps that get replayed a billion times over and over and over again, it's hard for new people to get into that.
And it really just hurts the new player.
Yeah. And you sort of lose that immersiveness quality to it because you're like, I've played this map 1,000 times before. Is that reminiscent of any sort of realistic combat situation? No. Every combat situation, you're going to be going into new territory. It's not going to be like, had this firefight here yesterday. Unless it's some sort of like trench warfare thing, it's going to be
World War II is like,
So I think, why not throw a map in there? I mean, people can argue about all the details of this forever. And I know some people are going to prefer the more hardcore approach of Tarkov because it feels more like the cool kids club if you learn it, right? You're like, I know a thing that other people don't. And now I have that knowledge advantage. But
what's cool also too is that you can queue up with randos.
Yeah.
Like it will queue you up with like random people. There's no friendly fire at all. which is, some people might not like that. But at the same time, it also just is because it's a video game. It's like, it's okay to just have it be a video game. And on top of that, I'm not having to second guess every 2 seconds. Is that a friendly, or is it my, like the random in my team? And also they have like a head, an icon above their head. So you absolutely know it's a friendly. But what's nice about it is that when you queue up with randos, there's no incentive for them to try to kill you for your loot. And so I've had like a ton of great rounds where I'm just communicating on the fly. Like, I'm going to go flank on the round on the right. Like, you push in. And I've had like actually sort of tactical as you can get with randoms in a Tarkov style game, which I was incredibly surprised by. And it was fun playing with, people on the internet.
Yeah.
Wild.
And it does make you wonder how much other games like Tarkov or even Gray Zone, which is going with the no UI, people can loot your body when you die, even if it's a friendly type situation. How much of those quality situations are they losing because they're like, realism above all else? And you're like, realism.
Gray Zone has the
draw the
where
line?
It's impossible to know if it's a teammate or not, unless you check your map. You're like, is that dot in front of me?
And the hesitation gets you killed because you're like, wait, really I don't want to shoot my teammate. And then the guy just blasts you because he's a solo player who's like, nobody's around me for a mile in any direction. I'm going to instantly shoot anything that moves.
Anyone, right.
And so you get punished for playing with the team for that. And it's just, it is aggravating. And I know there's a market for it, but I've always, I'm not a milsim guy. Like, I appreciate an authentic feeling game, but I always want it to be a game at the end of the day that goes, hey, what can we do to make this more fun and more enjoyable while still keeping it immersive, And I'm always like pushing back towards like maybe a little more UI, maybe a little bit more of this, maybe a few quality of life features. And I think Arena doesn't feel beholden to that hardcore Tarkov nature. It is blatantly inspired by Tarkov, it's not.
Let me be clear. Like, even though I'm praising like the quality of life and things like that, it's mainly because these are things that I wouldn't mind seeing in something like Tarkov. Maybe not to the extreme of having like an icon above friendlies' heads, because that would be a very big departure from what they're going for. But like the game, I have no idea if the game's going to be good in the long run. Who knows if it's actually going to be able to, especially because it's free to play, which really
we don't know what the monetization future is, right? It's like they're going to try and get everybody in, get them hooked, and then be like, bam, monetization, pay to win craziness.
I don't know how that's all going to play. Is it going to be cosmetic? Is there, I mean, we've seen from Gray Zone even as well, they're like, they lean into, if we can add some pay to win elements here and there with, bigger secure containers and things like that. I can't imagine what a free to play is going to try to pull off. So I'm hesitant, but I was honestly pretty pleasantly surprised with how competent the game was. I did not expect it to be as smooth. Like, I actually had a good frame rate, and when I aimed down sight with an optic,
that's a huge thing. It just runs really well for everyone. It runs
well, and that was kind of the joke. Is like, people are like, this is just Tarkov, and they stole everything. It's like, well, they didn't clearly steal everything because it actually runs well.
They
queue times are
optimize
fast.
the game.
Doesn't take 5 days to get into a match where you're just like searching for a game and like waiting for players to load. It's like, get in, have fun, and I was pleasantly surprised, all things considered.
I do think, and I'm going to defend not necessarily Tarkov here, but just sort of the game industry in that this game is so similar. It's hard within the shooter world because all shooters look like other shooters to a degree.
Right.
And you're like, well, my game has an AK and it plays in the jungle, and so does yours, And it's like, okay, well, it could be totally different games. This one is so similar. We have to give them the complete leeway of, they didn't reinvent the wheel. They made the wheel exactly like that. And they're like, well, what if it had a little bit more tread on it or something? They just like, all they had to do was copy and then tweak a very few small things and make it better, which you're like, I think people are giving them the pass because Tarkov has had so long to make their experience more accessible, better, whatever, improve their performance, and they haven't. So people are kind of giving Arena Breakout the pass in a way because they're like, well, Tarkov had their chance and they're not really doing it, and they've had a history of doing other crummy stuff. So we're going to let this company just kind of get away with more or less copying their entire product.
The funny thing is like Nikita, the head of BSG for Tarkov, is now like tweeting out, like, you know, trying to get feedback and being transparent. It's like, it's weird that all this transparency is starting to come out now. Why is there? Because there's competition in your space now. It's not just you anymore. So even if Breakout doesn't actually, you know, take off the way that some people are thinking that it will, even if it can just get more competition to, you know, push and bring quality of life and everything to these games, I'm here for it.
Yeah. And I'm not particularly invested in either one. So this whole debacle and thing between them is more entertaining for me. But yeah, it would be kind of upsetting to see, like, as me being a Battlefield fanboy or a Star Citizen fanboy, if I saw some other company just rip all their assets and make a game that costs half the price.
Yeah, totally.
You know, if you steal somebody else's intellectual property or their research or their ideas, you're saving a crap load of money on research and playtesting and
also
ideas.
Theft. It's just theft.
Yeah, it's theft. Well, I just see that argument a lot with any sort of product where some company comes out with a cool product and then a year later another company says, here's that same product but at half the price. And it's like, yeah, but they didn't pay the R&D costs. They just stole the idea. And people are like, look, this company's better because they're not charging an arm and a leg for it. It's like, yeah, because they didn't have to pay an arm and a leg to invent it. That always irks me. And there's definitely some of that's happening here because they didn't have to think about how to make a cool extraction shooter, which is what Tarkov had to do.
The road paved for them by Tarkov.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. So they innovated very little, but they fixed a lot of the things or improved a lot of areas that someone like me would actually want. Like, I enjoyed playing it a lot more than I do playing Tarkov, you know.
Way less punishing.
Yeah.
It's still intense. Like, I had some incredible moments. I had run around where I, you know, was able to flank around. I was using a terrible shotgun and was able to take out two guys, picked up their weapons, took out a third, and eventually got dropped. And that was super intense. So it still has the Tarkov feel, but not as like in your face, brutal and punishing because it's just, that's what they're going for.
Speaking of Star Citizen.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
What a transition. That was smooth.
I mentioned it like 20 seconds ago, dude. I can transition right into it. The patch dropped. The mega patch. The Uber patch. They dropped it on a Friday, as one does. The Uber patch. I don't know why Star Citizen does this. They drop giant patches on Friday. They're like, hopefully this is good, which, I mean, they never are at the first launch. Right. And then you just have the weekend to be like, pain, agony. And then on Monday, they're like, all right, we got some good data from your suffering.
Let's fix it.
Yeah, we're going to tune and tweak it. And I honestly think that is the plan to a degree, where they're just like, all right, suffer over the weekend. We'll make it better when we get back on Monday.
We already have you. You're not going anywhere.
The patch really is impressive. The stability and performance and underlying stuff is not great. So I was hoping it would be a point where I could be like, everybody hop on board, you know, but I wasn't really holding out a realistic expectation for that. The quality of life updates are really cool. And I think once they just get a little bit of polish in there, a little bit of performance optimization for those servers, it's like playing Star Citizen where we're not relying on placeholder systems to a degree. Where you're, it's not like us playing and I'm like, don't worry, that's going to be better, you know?
Right. It's finally kind of getting, we're almost kind of getting there.
That was the running joke last time we played was... me saying like, oh yeah, well, they're going to add this to the game later. And I had to say that 20 times throughout playing the game because you kept going, why don't they have a system for this? Well, a lot of those systems just got added and now it feels like we don't have to imagine what the next placeholder system is going to be like. So that's really exciting. The star map, looting, inventory stuff, all kinds of new... I mean, it's a massive patch. It really is insane. And I think part of why I'm giving them a pass for the server stuff is that this is the first time they've added replication layer to the live servers, which has crash recovery and other stuff built into it.
Is it working? The crash recovery?
I've crashed, but the crash recovery is supposed to be for server crashes. So if the server crashes, your game client, in theory, will pause for a little bit and then resume as it goes on.
Understandable.
So that has worked when they were testing it before. I haven't seen any examples of it on live yet, but hopefully it's a huge update, and they're trying to get it out before the free fly weekend, or free fly week, I guess, for Invictus launch week.
When's that?
It's like a week from now. So they got their work cut out for them.
Yep.
And then that's probably going to kill all the servers all over again, because the player base is going to expand tenfold, and
of course,
if not more. And then
especially with all the new features and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, because it's making waves, But it is cool, man. There's these massive facilities now that are set up for giant FPS raid missions. And it starts on Friday. Okay, Invictus launch week starts Friday. But these big new distribution centers, man, they're like huge. You go inside and it's like bulkheads and security checkpoints and secret vents and tunnels and areas you can go. And so it seems like it's set up for getting together a group of friends and being like, hey guys, I got this crazy mission. We got to go here, get inside this facility, extract this document or this data, and get out somehow. It's going to be a crazy mission. Like, let's load up. I think a bunch of that's in the game right now. Is just locked behind a little bit of a reputation build. So I got to build up some reputation with the right companies so I can get some.
My favorite, rep grinds.
Yeah, they
bring me back the old
World
of Warcraft days.
I know, dude. They keep resetting the wallet and the reputation in Star Citizen, and people are just like, no, why?
Stop.
I know. They're like, test all of our features. And you're like, well, you just took all my money and reputation. So
right. So I can't really do that. Thanks. Yeah. Unless I spend a ton of money.
Mm-hmm. So all the testing is very lopsided towards the entry level progression and features.
Right.
And then the middle to late game features get way less testing.
Right.
Which has always struck me as quite odd. And
silly.
They still do it, but it is what it is, man. I don't know why it is, but it is.
They'll figure out the hard way.
Yeah. So my recommendation for anyone who's been on the fence of like, is now the time? Because that's the Star Citizen question in the YouTube comments is always like, is it a good game now? Should I play now? Give it a little bit. Wait a couple weeks. See what happens. And if things look good in a couple weeks, then hop on board, because it is a lot better. That said, there isn't really a good new player introduction experience to the game. They have a tutorial that you can check on, but it's not a tutorial. It's not good enough. Yeah, it's like, here's how to get out of your bed type stuff, and like, here's how to find your spaceship, and
here's WASD. It's like, man.
Yeah. Even loading up the patch, I was trying to find the new keybinds for the new systems, and going through the keybind list in that game, it makes other games
look tough.
Yeah, it's insane. There's so many keybinds. There's 300 plus.
Can you search for things?
No.
Oh, because that's what's really nice. I mean, Counter-Strike has that, where you literally just search and like, I want to see, ADS or whatever, and it'll just find what you want.
Like, I'm almost positive today I was looking at something and I was thinking, I wish this game had a search function. So yeah. I don't think there is any search function in the keybinds. And even if there was one, you would have to know what the function is called.
Right.
So you'd be like, what's the target? Yeah, Jason says there's no search, which there absolutely should be, because there's hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah.
And so like the thing I was looking for was like precision mode or something. I didn't know it was called precision mode. It's the zoom in mode when you're flying a spaceship. And I was trying to figure out how to bind that to a new button. Took me 5 minutes just to find. I had to message somebody on Discord and be like, hey dude, what is the function called? And that is from somebody who's put hundreds of hours into the game. Imagine a new player who's
they wouldn't be able to find that.
Yeah, they really got to overhaul all the key binding in that game. Like, there's a billion targeting. Like, I use 2 targeting buttons to target another spaceship. Yet there's 40 targeting button bind options. Why?
40? What are you targeting? Their engine, their left rudder.
I really don't know. Yeah, I think they just want to give you options, and then I assume collate that data and be like, here's what 90% of people are using. Let's just whittle it down to that, but they never have. So I don't know. I really don't know, man. It's wild, but it's looking better. Don't turn on Vulkan. They added Vulkan to the game and it hard crashed my PC. So stick with DirectX 11 for a little bit until that comes out of beta.
I mean, sounds good.
Yeah. Are you I haven't played it yet. I kind of want to play it tonight. Homeworld 3 dropped.
I have not. No.
Are you planning on playing it?
I might check it out. The reviews are they're not amazing, but they're not like bad. I was a little worried that things were going to be pretty rough for that because of what I experienced during the demo. But maybe my experience of the demo was just me being bad, and it was a demo, so can't really expect a whole lot from it. But I was watching some like streams. It looked fun. It looked, if you're into that kind of thing. Yeah. But I didn't have a chance to play myself.
Yeah. I'm predominantly interested in the single player. Like I'm not going to take a 3D space RTS seriously when it comes to multiplayer. I'm like, I don't want to put in the 100 hours it takes to get competent in this field.
And they even have apparently a roguelike mode where you can like play it over and over in different, like with different, settings and challenges. It's cool.
Yeah. No, I haven't played it yet, but I do want to check it out. Yeah. The ultimate RTS space game from my childhood.
The ultimate. Yeah, no, I've been busy with couple games this week.
Yeah.
Hades 2, V Rising, and then your Arena Breakout.
Yeah. So what's the verdict on Hades?
Well, it's amazing. I can't get around it. It's fantastic. It is there. I think there's more content in this early access than there was in the entirety of Hades 1, like the entire game, which is nuts. It's basically the original game, but bigger, and it doesn't play exactly the same. The gameplay is a little bit different. It's more focused on like casting. You've got like a big cast that you can like root enemies and stuff like that. You really, really rely on it. There's also the ability to sprint, so you're not dodging as much if you don't want to, where you're actually using the sprint to maneuver around instead of just dodging. They are going to have to work on that though, because they've already recognized there was a little update today where they said, things aren't really working out the way that should in this, and people are like struggling with it a little bit more than we want. So they're going to be tuning things, but it just oozes like polish, and it's just fantastic. The voice acting, the combat is varied. Every weapon feels different. I could get like into some nitpicky things where some of the boons don't really feel all that impactful, but it is a fantastic game. Yeah. That's
great to hear that they knocked it out of the park again. Cause following up a on one of my, it is my favorite, tied with maybe FTL for my favorite roguelike type games. That one's just so fun. It scratches that Diablo itch and makes it interesting. I remember playing it for the first time and just thinking, this solves the Diablo problem of just getting stuck with the same build forever. And you're just in that action RPG, and you're
constantly,
like, I guess I'm a werewolf forever because all of my gear is werewolf gear.
Character. Yeah. Right.
You're like, I guess I'll just do this for the next 50 hours. And Hades is like, hey, what if you just did it for 40 minutes and then came up with a cool experience? And over the course of 40 minutes, evolve into something more and crazier, and then next time take a completely different route. And it's just such a cool idea. I'm curious now because I've been avoiding stuff on the game because I do want to go in when it's final, when it's 1.0.
Yeah. I don't blame you for wanting to wait.
But not having dodge.
So you can dodge.
You can dodge, but it's less. It's less of a dodging.
Dodging is incredibly powerful. I'm just saying there isn't now the ability to be able to sprint because there'll be certain moves where dodging won't really work as well as you'd like because it's like a beam and you have to run away from the beam in a circle, right?
I see what you're saying.
Stuff like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and rooting will be interesting because I don't think rooting was in the first game at all. So that'll be interesting to check out. Yeah, it was more just like kind of elemental powers. You're just lightning and firing people and
And the stories, I mean, there is a story here, and it's solid for what it is, and the voice acting is incredible. And I just love how every god will like reference things. They'll be, they're referencing when you're already aligned with another god, or what happened in the previous run, and it's just, God, it just oozes polish, like you're just living in this world, and I love it. It's great. Oh, and you can take baths with people.
With people.
Yeah, well, gods, and people. Yeah,
I'd prefer to take baths with gods. That seems way more interesting.
Yeah,
cool. Well, I know, I see what you're doing there, Matt. You just jumping from your stellar blade over into Hades' bathtub.
I just can't get enough of it. Yeah,
I know how you pick
looking
your
for
games.
The next waifu fix.
Man, I wish that was what you streamed all the time, and like, here's Matt going on his little relationship simulator.
Just another anime waifu game.
Yeah. Oh man, where the money's at.
It is. So long story short, Hades 2 is fantastic. I cannot wait to see where it goes. I don't know if I put like 15 plus hours in it. I still haven't beaten I don't even know if it's the final boss. But I think it's I won't say who it is or anything, but it's really hard. They hit like a truck, and getting there is tough. And not only do I feel like I've gotten better, like I personally have gotten better, but your character's also getting stronger. And the fact that my knowledge of the boons and what complements each other has also improved. I can now like have certain builds that will get me to the final boss faster and more reliably, but then he'll just kick you in the face and you're just like, oh, and I'm dead again. So
dude, well, I mean, that's what it was the first time with Hades, really. Like,
so far I feel like this is harder than Hades 1.
Really? Okay, that'll be interesting.
I don't know, I don't want to say like a big amount, but it definitely feels harder, for at least for me, because it was Hades 1, I got to the final boss and then beat him pretty quickly, at least from what I remember.
Okay. It took me a little while to get there. I remember.
And this one's like, oh, you finally made it to the final boss and you're dead.
That's brutal. Because especially when they don't give you enough time to try and learn some patterns or something, you're just like, I only saw 1 or 2 attack sequences and he just blasted me, man.
Right.
Yeah, those are brutal. And you're like, cool, that was 45 minutes to learn 4 seconds of final boss combat.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'll just do it all over again. But it's fun to do it all over again. It's like, because you're getting upgrades and
you get the upgrades,
chatting with people, and
I know it's interesting too. I kind of like it because you always wonder, would I have been good enough to beat, if I went back to a reset, would I be good enough to beat the boss from like the ground level,
very beginning?
And that's a fun question to play, and then you can restart it all if you want. So
you have different save files.
It's a great formula. It really is a solid thing. How's you getting hyped up for the next Battlefield game, Matt? Have you
oh baby.
You hear Andrew Wilson?
Yes, the man himself, Andrew Wilson, our savior of battle.
If anybody knows Battlefield, it's Andrew Wilson.
So I heard that he's played Battlefield. It's in a playable state, and he says it's going to be a tremendous live service game. Is that kind of the
baby people? The parallels between so what happened is I think it was an investor's call or something, and Andrew Wilson pops on and says, hey, I played the latest Battlefield game, it's amazing, blah blah blah, it's going to be a tremendous live service title, so excited for it, all that stuff. And I know played, says Khan in chat, and like, did he play it? He watched somebody talk about it, probably. But the parallels between him saying this previously, or something akin to this with the Battlefield 2042 release, being ahead of schedule, all this stuff, the timing is all just lining up to be very similar to previous games, previous launch disasters, I should say. And so everybody's taking in that information and going, oh boy, like this is not hyping me up or building confidence in the next title. It's making me extremely skeptical.
Like this early though, because I don't think it's coming out this year. I don't think we're getting a 2024 Battlefield. But if it comes out next year, I mean, that's still, if it's in a playable state now, and we got. So let me preface this. I don't believe
defending him. Oh yeah.
I don't believe him at all. I think that it's an investor's call. He's not going to be like, hey guys, the next Battlefield, not looking very good. I feel like you should take your money somewhere else. Honestly,
or it's an investor call. He's not going to be like, oh, dude, the guns are so cool. The recoil is awesome. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's trying to hype up their company. Like that's the whole point of the like they're not going to. Yeah. So anyways, that's why I'm highly skeptical of that. But if it truly is in a playable state right now, that actually does give me some hope that things are at least positive, and that that will give them enough time to actually hammer out and polish the game, because that's really the biggest issue, is they've just never had enough time to like polish a lot of their Battlefield titles until they when they release.
What do you think about? It's so funny to see the live service arguments continue, because ever since Battlefield went live service from its prior DLC model, which, let's be honest, Premium. The whole industry has gone this route, though. Like,
yeah, it's not just Battlefield, it's everything.
Yeah, everything's gone this route, and there's this like diehard group of Battlefield fans that are like, go back to the previous way. Do you think that there's some legitimacy to that? Do you think live service has made Battlefield bad, or do you think Battlefield's just made Battlefield bad?
I think Battlefield has made Battlefield bad. I think that, so my frustration, I think I've talked about this before, maybe not on the podcast, but my frustration I share with all those other people, right? Premium was incredible for what it was, because they had to sell you a product. It was $50, and they had to sell you something for that $50. So like, okay, well, it's going to have, 4 maps every season, and there's going to be four seasons. There's going to be like 10 guns for every single one of them. So they were selling you something. Yeah. And if they were able to deliver that kind of a product, but in a live service format, like, best of both worlds, right?
Yeah.
So what's frustrating is that we hear from these big AAA companies like Call of Duty and maybe even Battlefield, I don't know, where they're like, we're making more money than ever with live service, right? Well, then why are you giving us less content? Why did the previous one that's making you less money deliver more content than your live service? It's because the live service isn't a requirement. They're not on the hook like what they were for Hardline or these other, for the premium, especially Hardline, where they're like, we have to do it because we sold a product. They can be like, oh, this didn't really work out, so we're only going to make like one map, and that's all you get. So be happy with it.
Yeah, Hardline would have had very little content, because do you remember that last DLC? Almost nobody on PC was playing it. I remember logging in to try and capture some gameplay, and the servers were empty, and I was like, this is like launch day. What the hell's going on? Nobody's playing.
Which is a great example of why Premium, while in some cases for Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3 was great because it had a healthy player base, but even back then, you ran into the problem where a lot of servers wouldn't run them 24/7 because there just wasn't the player base to sustain it, at least, long term for like, I want to play this specific mode. Well, too bad, because not everyone has the DLC, and that sucked. And so
they would put the game on sale later, so they would get a whole big new influx of new players, and they would try and sell them the DLC after that, right? But those new players wouldn't have it, so the player base that kept kind of funneling through Battlefield would only have the first portion of the game. So this just fracturing of the player base stuff, I think companies have figured out a way to fix it. DICE really sucks at figuring out live service stuff. Like they're not good at it. They're so behind the curve. They start doing what Call of Duty is doing like 2 to 3 years after, and it's already out of date. It's already like old hat by the time that they start doing it. And like, we're offering this, and you're like, man, that's COD 3 years ago. Do the new thing now. Do the more modern trend, or come up with your own thing. So
I just think the perfect world for is to bring back premium style content, but in a live service format. Like, can you imagine if a Battlefield game came out and they're like 4 maps for free for everyone? You get like 6-8 weapons for all the different classes, and it's going to be funded through the battle pass and cosmetic items. And they did that every 4 months for like a year. And then they like, like I don't see if anyone would be like, I have a problem with this. It's like, really? I mean, I like my cosmetic items. Don't get me wrong. I like to be able to earn those in game. But if that's the way that they get around, keeping the player base together, that would be amazing. That's what I'm looking for. But I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, and I don't understand why they always take so long with this player hosted server thing, because I mean, players want to pay for and host their own servers. They literally want to take the server hosting fees off of your hands, and they're like, I don't know about that.
No.
Yeah, so that one always cracks me up. But making 4 maps and a pack of weapons, as long as you have a good pipeline for the game, like at that point, once you're making content, you've already got all your map making tools. You already know how to make weapons. You're not inventing new technology for the next DLC. That should be an efficient pipeline and a relatively inexpensive pipeline in the grand scheme of things. It's not going to cost you anywhere near as much as it did to develop the underlying game. You're just adding a bunch of weapons and maps and hopefully not an operator to the next DLC.
They're not operators. They're specialist level cap.
Yeah, this is Clint.
This is Bob. He's the builder.
Yeah, Bob the builder. He comes with 3 rocket launchers. You're just like, come on, man.
He can do it.
Yeah, I am totally opposed to class systems unless they add me as a character, in which case I'm all for it.
And then, yeah.
The level then I will sell out. I'll be like,
absolutely.
You should have the best gun in the game for sure, and wall hacks.
So bringing it back, I'm obviously skeptical with what was his name? Andrew Wilson? Is that is that the CEO? Very skeptical. I hope that, but what he means by tremendous is that they do have plans. They have plans of bringing tons of content post-launch, because really they just need to have a solid game at release that's fun to play, that's complete, and then have a pipeline already ready for that future content to keep the player engaged. That's the recipe. It's hard. I realize that it's not easy. You can't snap your fingers and just make it happen. But that's what people have been looking for. Yeah. And I just hope that they can do it.
They have the formula. They invented the formula. You don't have to copy anybody else. You own the formula.
Yeah.
Just take that, add a little spice onto it, do whatever you got to do to make it interesting, and then pump out the content, But maybe the industry's shifting, and a lot of the really big talented people are kind of moving away from AAA, and they're going to do their own projects or whatever. But
maybe,
who knows? I do wish the best for them. Obviously, I hope the next Battlefield game is crazy good. But it was a very cringy statement that everybody in the world was like, "Here we go, here we go with the vague hypening."
I want to believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to mention, so last week we were chatting about the whole Helldivers 2 drama. And I wanted to clarify one thing on that story, where information has been coming out like in little packets here and there all over the place. So we're trying to absorb it as we can. And apparently Steam didn't delist Helldivers 2. It was Sony delisting Helldivers 2. I saw a little tweet about this.
In all these countries right now?
Yeah.
Right.
So I saw
this is the kind of the updated drama that's been going on. Continue.
Yeah. So prior, it was sort of like, Steam delisted a lot of people thought Steam delisted the game because of the PlayStation Network requirements that Sony was adding to the game. They're just like, we're going to delist it. Apparently, the more updated info is that Sony delisted the game due to the PlayStation Network
requirements. And they delisted, I think, 3 more. So it's at 180 countries can't buy.
Yeah. What's the latest one? Ghost of Tsushima or something that people
That'll be coming out soon, yeah.
Pissed off about.
And I think that's also been delisted.
Yeah. That's a big title too. Yeah.
Why is Sony like, you know what? They don't want money.
Yeah.
We don't want your money. Why do you want their money? What is happening?
I think it's math, right? So whatever the conversion ratio of getting people in the PSN is, it ends up being more than whatever they're losing to not selling in the Philippines or wherever they can't sell the game.
That's wild to me.
Yeah. I mean,
you think that's they're making more money by getting more people on the PSN network than they would just by selling in countries?
I would assume so, or it's a long-term plan, which is like, we need to make the PlayStation Network as robust as possible, and that way we have a very strong marketplace to get other developers to come make games for Sony, right? Or
I can see that.
come on to PlayStation. We've got 10 million active users every day or something, you know,
Right.
and then, so that looks good. But yeah, they can, it's not a bad plan to just use all of your hot titles to get people to sign up for the PSN, especially pulling in all these PC players that are like, why do I need a PSN account? Who are just getting annoyed, but it is whatever. It's your EA, your Ubisoft, your PSN account,
your Microsoft account. Yeah.
You gotta have them all, man.
They're like Pokemon, and I'm catching all of them.
Yep. I want my skeleton key. I just want the one account to rule them all.
Yeah. I think there are some websites where you can log in and then Yeah.
I think GOG has some client where you can aggregate all your stuff together.
Yeah, link them all together. Yep.
Something cool like that.
It just seems very weird. Just from a cursory glance, it's like, why don't you want money, Sony? Why don't people want to buy your games in these countries? Just let them buy them. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Also, I find it very strange that people are acting like this is some sort of nefarious thing that Sony is doing. Like they're rubbing their hands together. You want our video games? Well, nay, sir, because of reasons. Like, what do you? They're not doing it because they're evil. Stop that. There's probably a reason, but
yeah. Well, nobody takes economy classes, so they're just I don't understand how
I don't think they're doing it because they're evil. They're definitely doing something that's not great for those countries, obviously. But there's this weird undertone of discussion online where they're trying to do it to, I don't know. It's just weird conspiracies.
Yeah, well, I mean, every single company's doing it, but when Sony does it, it's evil or something. I don't know. It's just because they're new to the market and people don't.
They're definitely blundering
account.
for sure, 100%. It's stupid, but I do agree.
I see you have more Helldivers drama.
That was the drama. The fact that they're doubling down on the fact that you can't buy games in these countries for reasons that I don't know.
Yeah, well, we'll see if it's the long-term correct solution. I mean, it's somebody in chat pointed out that it's the way that Japanese companies operate, and Nintendo has their own weird set of rules that nobody else does.
They're almost draconian to some extent. They are wild. And
somehow they're still one of the biggest publishers, console manufacturers in the world, So
it works, I guess.
Who are we to argue with their insanity? They're huge. They're mega. They make great games, more importantly.
Which is probably why they can get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, the Switch, it's cool, but it's one of the least powerful consoles out there. You hook it up to the TV, you're playing on 720p on half their games, and but they just make such good games. You got to get it, man. You got to play that Switch. You got to buy Mario Kart for $60 8 years after it came out or whenever it released. I don't know. I bought it recently at full price and I was just why is this so much money?
Why is it $70? What is happening right now?
This game came out forever ago.
They never go on sale. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, good for them. And they got little cartridges too. I mean, who the heck sells cartridges anymore?
Yeah.
Wow.
Speaking of more drama, did you hear about Marvel Rivals?
Oh yeah. My new full-time game. Yeah, I'm gonna full-time it on my channel now.
Oh, good.
I see a big future in Marvel Rivals.
Yeah.
Really unique game. Sort of, I think they're inventing this new type of game mode. It's like a 5v5 style thing, 6v6. I don't know what it is. 6v6. Yeah. It was, I think they were thinking about doing 5v5 and then maybe changed it to 6v6.
Maybe change it up. Yeah.
It's basically It's Overwatch, but you're the Hulk instead of Reinhardt, or whatever. And you're Iron Man instead of the.
Is that because Overwatch and Blizzard are known for their polish, and they're known for just oozing the everything. It's just very. When you're playing a Blizzard game, you're playing a Blizzard game, right? They're very polished, and they spend a lot of time really.
They almost go under as a company polishing their games, with Diablo, whatever. Diablo 2 took forever,
Right. And so when you watch Marvel Rivals, while apparently the balance is terrible, according to people that have actually played it, looking at it, you're damn, this actually just looks like Overwatch, which I think is a compliment because Overwatch looks really good. It is a visually nice looking game and it looks and it plays well. And while I haven't played it myself, yeah, the game looks okay, at least gameplay wise, but it is a 100% an Overwatch clone with Marvel characters. Now, the drama part is that there was a lot of content creators, apparently, if they wanted to get a code to be able to play the game, there was a little caveat, little thing at the bottom that said that you basically can't like overly criticize the game or compare it to similar games. And doing so would revoke you from the creator program. And
I am glad that got leaked. That needed to be out there.
Yeah. So basically, don't badmouth our game or compare it to Overwatch, because that's what it is, and you can stay in.
Yeah. It's
not a good look.
Yeah, no, it's not good. It's basically as close as you can get without being illegal. I don't know. Maybe it is illegal to require this type of stuff, but it's just we're in this area of. This has been happening forever. It's how the market cycle works. The advertising cycle works is your big company coming out with big new game. They can control the media cycle because they control who gets first access to the game. So they bring people in that they want to work with. And depending on how aggressive or evil that company is, they'll make them sign these things that say, hey, you can't criticize the game. You can't do this. You can't talk about these features. If there's a bug, you can't show the bug, whatever. And then the first round of videos that come out about that game, even if they're not overly praising the game necessarily, they can't directly show any sort of major problem with the game. So it is really curving the critique of the game and the initial impression. So they're controlling that review cycle as much as possible, because especially, and you know this as well as I do, on YouTube, if a early access video comes out on a game a week before and nobody else gets access to that, the viewership and the interest on that video is huge. And then if you come out with your review a week later, forget it. Nobody's going to watch that. So all the controlled press gets out there way before everything else, and it does its job, And so this is just a little peek behind the curtains of how that industry works. And I'm glad it got leaked out there because it's very aggressive.
Yeah. I don't think
they're not all like that. They're not all like that.
I don't want to imply like all of them are like that, because I would say that this is more the exception than the norm, because I think most companies do not do this, because I mean, really, at the end of the day, why can't companies just be like, yeah, we have a strong product. People are either going to like it or they're going to dislike it, but we stand by our product. We don't need to, it should speak for itself. It shouldn't be you need to have people praising it because you've said you have to praise it if you want access.
Yeah, well, but it's because the people controlling these events are not the developers. They're marketing. And marketing, honestly, is controlling so many of these big companies anyway. They're the guys that are saying we need to make a game that's Overwatch meets Marvels. You know, that wasn't a game dev that was like, I've got a great idea for a new video game. I'm super excited about this concept. It's Overwatch, but with Marvel characters. No game developer on the planet would have thought of this idea. It's 100% marketing. But they do stuff like this all the time. I remember getting kind of shafted about the, They do it in different ways, where like if they know you're not going to sign a contract that says I won't say a bad thing about a game, they can do other things. And I don't know if this happened intentionally or not. To my naivete, perhaps I give companies the benefit of the doubt when they don't deserve it. But I remember playing Battlefront 2 before the game came out to make content on it. Yeah. And it did not have the microtransaction system set up in the way that the final game did, which was the entire reason that game got blasted, was the heavily monetization of Yoda and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't in the version that everybody who got early access to play it. So of course that wasn't a critique of all the first round videos that dropped. And it absolutely screwed me, because people were like, hey, you sell out. Yeah. And I was like, well, shit, I got screwed because I wasn't informed that this wasn't the final way things were going to be. I had no idea they were going to do a rug pull on stuff, whether or not it was intended as a rug pull or somebody last minute was like, hey, what if we update the pricing model or something like that? But there's a billion different ways companies can handle this kind of stuff. It's not always just contracts, but this is just one little peek behind the curtain of how those things can go down.
Now, they did come out and say for Marvel Rivals that this was a miscommunication and that this is not actually what we mean, and we apologize. So that's good because it shouldn't be that way.
Well, they had to save their butts. They couldn't say
really
nothing.
Did.
Yeah,
because apparently there was also a content creator who got kicked off because they said some negative things on like a podcast or something. So it's like, well, are you actually sorry? Was this a miscommunication, or was it enforced? And now because people are aware of it, now you're going back on it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, I want to try the game. The game looks fun. Like I like Marvel. I like superheroes, and I liked Overwatch for what it was, and I'd love to play it. But it's like, companies, just stand by your product. It'll be okay. It'll be all right. And the criticisms that I've heard are that like the balance isn't great, but at the end of the day, from the people that I have seen play, they're like, it's fun. Like it's a fun game.
Also, like if you're comparing it to Overwatch balance, which has been messing with and tweaking its balance for years and years and years, like, we all know Overwatch wasn't perfectly balanced when it first came out. There was all kinds of exploits and crazy metas that you could get away with. So
my favorite were Winston's flying over the side, like flying over the walls and just descending upon everyone. It's my favorite strategy.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm trying to remember which, like Tracer was pretty devious at the very start. And then
she was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. They had to do a bunch of nerfs and stuff. We're like, all right, everybody's playing this one character. Let's tone it back a bit. I like Torbjorn every now and then when I just felt like being lazy, you know, I'm just going to build a turret.
Your bot. Mm-hmm.
I'm contributing. The good old day. I have a signed poster of all the lead devs of Overwatch, the original Overwatch.
Nice.
From them. They gave it to me at some event. Cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, I got it somewhere. I don't know.
You're special. You're the best.
I'll put it up and be like, yeah, signed by all the devs. I don't know. Yeah. This is a picture of me
cool.
with the, yeah. No, it's neat. How'd you like V Rising? Good?
It's great.
Bad?
It's fantastic. Yeah. It's how do you describe V Rising? It's a survival game, and it's kind of like Diablo-esque, where it's very combat focused. The combat is really fun, and you got all these different abilities, and they've streamlined it so that you can now kind of pick and choose the abilities that you want. So you're not having to like fight certain bosses to have the play style you're looking for. And it's got engaging crafting. It's got really, really, really fun base building where you're building out like an awesome castle, and they've got tons of cosmetics that you can.
So is it mostly base building, or is that a major component of it, or you can just do that?
It's a major component because you're going to have to create rooms for all of your different crafting stuff to be able to progress. Like you have to craft to progress.
Yeah.
That's your gear score is the only way you really get power in the game. There are some other ways, but that's like the main. If you have no armor on and no weapons, you're level like 1, right?
Okay.
Like and if you go against anything that's level like any higher, you're going to get one-shotted. So your gear score matters a lot. But the further along you go into like mid and late game, they start to have like some random stuff where you're gonna pick up like jewels off of the ground, which will enhance your skills. So that maybe that one ability that you use doesn't do an initial damage, but it will like do damage over time and then do like a big burst at the end. So it kind of changes things. So you have different ways of playing and different ways of trying different combat situations.
So I'm pretty unaware of V Rising. Like I've seen a couple of videos on it, but it's like an action RPG, but a survival action RPG.
Yeah, so I probably jumped the gun on. I figured you had a little bit of knowledge. That's my bad. So V Rising is, like I said, it's a top down, and you play as a vampire.
Yeah,
and so you have to worry about the sun. And if the sun is out and you're not in shade, you will start to take damage. And it gives you a little bit of warning, and it does a lot of damage. So the sun being out is actually a big environmental hazard that you have to work around. But good thing is it only like the days are predominantly night. So for the most part, you're going to be running around at night. You're going to be chopping down trees and hitting rocks to build your base. And you start off with just like some wood walls. And then all of a sudden you start making like really elaborate, awesome castles, really cool castles. So the base building is.
So do you just hide during the day? You just go back into your house and craft stuff?
You can, yeah. And it can be an excuse to go back into your house and like like that's where you're going to start crafting, right? And then when it becomes night, then you can go out and do your stuff. And then, so what's cool is that everything casts a shadow, pretty much.
Yeah.
So the trees will cast a shadow, and as long as you're within shadows, you're fine. And so you can have combat where you're bouncing between, you're trying to like, hit the enemy and then also bounce between the different shadow areas so you don't die. So nice. it makes combat somewhat fun. The best part of the game though is arguably the combat. Yeah. It's incredibly engaging. There's a wide array of different weapons. All of the weapons have different animations for their attacks. They also have different abilities. So you've got your 2 core abilities. You have an ultimate, and then you have 2 abilities on your weapons, and you can be swapping weapons so that you can really kind of mix and match, suiting your suiting the situation. And it's pretty deep. Yeah. I am very impressed. Everything feels really tight. And
what's the end goal of the game?
I don't know. I haven't gotten there.
Okay. Yeah. Do you just build up one major base, and how do you branch out?
I think you can have 2 technically.
Okay.
But yeah, right now I only have 1. I'm playing on a community server that my friends set up. So there's also PvP if you wanted. You can join a PvP server where it's solos or duos, where it's just you and maybe a friend, and then everyone else is also solo and duo. Mm-hmm. And you can like raid their base and take out their castles and stuff like that. So
nice.
If you're into that. But I'm not really doing anything like that. So I haven't really touched the PvP. But I think endgame is essentially the loot starts to become a little bit random, where it will have different stats on it that can roll. Like this one will have maybe a little bit more damage, this maybe a little bit more health for you. So there's a little bit of that kind of Diablo-esque style loot at the end, but it's not something that you're going to play for like months and months and months and months, where you're trying to grind out the best loot. I mean, you can, but yeah, it's kind of go through all the bosses. There's like 50 plus bosses. It's insane. And all of them are incredibly unique. And yeah, just try to get to the end and build out a cool base. And that's the game.
That's cool. 50 plus bosses for an action RPG where they're all unique is that's a huge amount, actually.
Yeah.
Because Diablo games would have like one major boss per act or something,
right?
It'd be like 4 acts. You're like, well, that's 4 big bosses, That's cool.
And when I say they're unique, they very much are. Like some of them will share attacks and stuff, but like there's one where you fight a fisherman, and there's another one, and it's like an actual unique fight. There's another fight
Does he
where
whap you with his fishing pole.
Literally, yeah. He'll throw his fishing line at you, and he'll grab, and he'll pull you over, he'll stun you, and then he'll summon like fish to come attack you.
Nice.
There's other ones. There's some where there's just a little tailor, and she's just a grandmom, and you go into a town, and she's just wandering around.
Townsfolk in this, and that like in his mind, he's like, these are the greatest bosses of all time, and it's just like,
well, that's the thing. She just runs away from you. The entire boss is her running away from you, and it will pull townsfolk to try to save her, and so it's not your conventional boss battle.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
Right. So it's just you have to then fight the waves of enemies.
People are like, save the old lady, and then you're like, get out of my way. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's fun, man. I like that. Mm-hmm. I might have to check out this game. It sounds super innovative.
Yeah, what's cool too is the environment tells a little bit of a story. There's a farmland, and there's in between the farmland there's another zone. Yeah. And there's like a barracks, and they're like a watch, right? And then you go there, and I was taking all of them out, and then all of a sudden this like vampiric horde starts running into the base. I'm like, they were here to protect the farmlands from the invading forces. And I was like, and so they literally just walked in, and then the invading forces went into the farmland and went to a town and started killing people. And I was like, this is crazy.
So the world is dynamic.
It's a little bit dynamic in that respect. Yeah.
You don't expect that from an action RPG survival type game as much,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, with that said, it can feel like the world is a little flat, other than those moments, right? But because there's no like dialogue with there's no quests or anything like that, right? It's all just it's just plopped down.
Wait, there's no quests at all?
No. Well, there's quests. There's quests to progress, because you're always trying to get to the next boss, right?
Yeah.
So there's ways of knowing where to get to the next boss. You're also leveling up your castle, so there's quests in that where you have to do certain things, but there's no go talk to this person or anything like that.
So for the most part, it's just each boss is kind of the quest then, or something.
Yeah, technically. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And you've got to improve your base to get the better crafting or get recipes so that you can get the better gear so that you can even go fight that boss. And then once you actually take out the boss, it will give you more gear or recipes to be able to then go fight the next boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds dope. Sounds cool.
It's very good. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a top-down survival game because it's fantastic.
Yeah, I love action RPG / survival stuff. I think survival can almost be integrated to any genre to a degree. Like you can just take the survival concept and just like throw it into your weird game. And you're like, well, now it's cool. It's got survival mechanics. I love this, you know?
Yeah.
So it's cool to see that making more of a breakthrough into other genres a bit more. Not saying that V Rising is the first game to do it, but there's not a lot of action RPGs that have those mechanics that I can think of anyway. You watch or read anything good, man?
I started watching Shogun.
Oh yeah, what do you think?
It's I gave it 3 out of 3 bowls. It's very good.
Wow. Yeah. It's fun.
I think I'm only like 3 or 4 episodes in right now, so it's a little slow. It's actually I thought it would be a little bit more not action packed, but very political. Obviously, there's a lot of undercurrents going on right now. You can see things where things are moving. Was not expecting it to be basically all in Japanese, though. I was not expecting. I knew that it was, but I wasn't expecting like 90% of the dialogue to be in Japanese.
Yeah, I had hold up Google Translate next to it so I could understand what they were saying.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, it's that was so the actor who plays, I forgot the Shogun guy's name, the guy who's sort of the main character who's not the British guy. He was like really adamant about doing it right. And hiring
I think
Japanese.
He said, if I do this, you're going to hire all Japanese actors, is what I think
play
he said.
The Japanese characters. Yeah, that would have been funny if he's like, and for the British people,
for the British guy,
and the Portuguese, they will also be Japanese. Like this guy's cool. Crazy.
They're all speaking. The English technically is not being spoken. They're speaking Portuguese, but they're speaking English for our sake, right? Which I thought was interesting.
I like that change because it made it a little more relatable to the characters who are out of place to a degree.
It is a show that is designed for a Western English audience, right? And I think that's fine.
Yeah,
but I do like that. You could also make the argument, well, then why aren't the Japanese people speaking English? It was like, well, okay, fair, but. What I enjoy is that I think what is his name, Blackheart, something like that.
Blackthorn, is that
Blackthorn?
John Blackthorn, is that it?
He's our glimpse into that world, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at through his lens. And my favorite moment is so far, well, maybe not my favorite moment. It's one of my favorites is when he's, without getting into spoilers, he meets the Japanese and they're like, "You savage," and then he immediately said, "You are a savage," and they have no idea what they're saying because they don't speak the language. Calling
each other savages.
They're both calling each other savages. I'm like, that's so beautiful because they're both and they are both savages based off of with our
perception
like, morality,
of savagery,
right? Yeah. But they were both savages. Like, they were terrible.
For sure. Yeah. I know. And I'm excited for you to get further into that show because the character evolution of everybody in that show is really great. Like the main John Blackthorn, the Shogun guy, the main girl in it, all of their evolutions are really amazing.
Really well done.
Even a bunch of the other side characters become some of my favorite characters in the show. Just so well written, so well acted, and like by the end of it, I'm like almost tearing up with stuff. You know, it's like it's really good.
It's okay to show emotions level. Okay, it's all right.
I was born in the 80s, Matt. Like, I don't know, man. I mean,
technically I was too.
Yeah, but I grew up in the hood. Okay, man, we didn't have emotions.
The gated community hood, but the hood.
Yeah. No, I grew up in a bad part of Oakland, okay, bro?
Yeah. You're so I'm really liking the main character, John Blackthorn. If that is his name, I can't remember.
Yeah.
What I love about him is that he's like dumb, but he's also like street smart. Speaking of street smart, he feels like he's very quick on his feet, and so he's very bombastic. But there's just something about him that I don't know. I like him. He's cool.
Yeah, he's charismatic to a degree because he kind of.
But he's also kind of just a blumbering, like big.
He is. Yeah.
Yeah. I like him. He's good.
It's a good juxtaposition of him being this sort of the crude British sailor character amongst the refined Japanese culture. And I say that with quotation marks because they do horrific things to their people.
Horrible things. It's like a veil when they're just doing the seppuku stuff is just, I cannot believe that as a cult, like, I'm sure it didn't happen as often, but just the fact that it happened at all is wild.
Yeah.
Right. It's the first episode hits you with all these, like, they're clearly trying to establish early on, like, this is brutal. This society is not what you would probably first expect, because they just, like, it's it's, I don't want to get into spoilers, but it is
shocking. Even knowing all of those things, like, I didn't go into the show not knowing that these were part of Japanese culture, but the show still just hits you with it in a way where you're like, holy crap, like, okay, I didn't know all this stuff was going to happen, man. This is getting too real for me.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I watched 2 movies since the last podcast. I went back and I watched one that I really wanted to. It came out for free. I wasn't going to pay for it. It came out on Netflix.
How dare you wait and pay for it on another platform? Because you are paying for Netflix. But continue.
Yeah. Well, Netflix paid the guys who made the movie. All right. Peter Jackson, after he made The Hobbit, I think helped produce this movie. This was like a little pet project of his. It's called Mortal Engines. It has
the moving city ones.
Did you watch it?
I haven't seen it, no, but
It had bad reviews. And so I stayed away from it for a long time. It's part of why I didn't pay to rent it. But the trailer looked awesome. And I was like, how is this bad reviews? I want to watch this. It's like, it's gigantic cities on tank treads and massive wheels. And they roam around this, I don't know where they are, just Europe or something. And they
love the world building of that. That's so cool.
They fight each other and they eat each other. Like London is one of the cities, and it just opens up this giant mouth on the front and like eats smaller cities. And the smaller cities are like trying to drive away from it. And then when they eat them, they actually take the people out and they give them jobs and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of nice.
Oh, okay. So they don't just murder them. Okay, that's good.
I mean, some people get murdered along the way.
Obviously. Yeah,
and you gotta, I mean, you kind of have to like pledge your allegiance or whatever, or you get turned into food. I'm not really sure. But the world is so bizarre that I just couldn't. It's just fun. They just had fun with the movie, and
so you enjoyed it.
I did. It's good. Not like highbrow entertainment. It's good. It's good, dumb fun. But if you want like a movie that just isn't afraid to just be like, screw it, we're gonna take all of your conventions about what a fantasy movie should be and just like kind of toss them out with this weird world of like giant moving cities or cities that exist in hot air balloon networks, or like a gigantic wall of fortifications that like cities are trying to fight. And like, it's just bizarre. Or like weird small scavenger cities. They call them scav cities, which I thought was funny. And they'll like just hunt down like people at night or something. And like, this is so weird, but cool. And
do people live on the ground? Like, you know, anyone is just normally on the ground?
Well, it's funny because the whole like the intro, like they tell you this in the first 30 seconds of the movie, is like, oh, the world was, you know, made toxic by all these crazy weapons of the future, right?
So the ground is toxic.
They don't nuke it, but they have some sort of antimatter weapon or something, you know. And it's supposed to be toxic, except everything's lush and green and beautiful. And I'm like, where's the toxicity?
That's what I was going to say. I saw the trailer and like, it looks like, just looks like a normal world, but they're on moving cities.
And at multiple times they are just walking around the normal world. And I'm like, where's the toxicity? You could make a house anywhere. It looks perfectly fine. A little
bit of a loophole.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I wasn't exactly looking for the scientific backing on this film. But I do, it's based off a book. That's right. I don't know if it was like a graphic novel or what. It very much has graphic novel vibes to it. But I think it was solid. I think the reviews did it a disservice in that, like, it felt sort of like a Starship Troopers type thing where it's like, it knows it's goofy and ridiculous and silly. And you've got that guy who played Agent Smith as like the main bad guy, and he's fun and ridiculous and fighting each other. And the budget on that must have been insane, because every scene, there's just scenes where they're like flying airplanes through cities that are moving, and then there's like 50,000 explosions with people sword fighting in front of it. And you're like, how much did this movie cost to make? It must have been insanity.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, they probably didn't make it back, would be my guess on that one.
Considering the reviews, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Peter Jackson, did you hear about the new Lord of the Rings movie that's going to be in production?
Yeah, well, you know what? They had such good success with the Golum video game that they're like, let's follow it up with a Golum movie.
Yeah, well, it does. So the reason why I'm not as scared as I would have been is that it has Andy Serkis as the director, I think. And then Peter Jackson, I think, is helping out. So, yeah, wait, did I get that? Who did it? No, who is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, Andy Serkis would be the guy playing Golum. But he does direct also, I think.
Peter Jackson. Sorry, I had a giant brain fart. I thought I said something else.
Yeah.
Yes. So I love Andy Serkis. I think he's a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
And while I don't know why they feel like they need to tell a story for Gollum, he seems incredibly passionate for that world and that universe. Have you seen his audiobook for Lord of the Rings?
No.
It's wild. I would recommend.
Wait, Andy Serkis or Peter Jackson?
Andy Serkis is who plays. Andy Serkis plays.
No, but
Golum.
who does the audiobook?
Andy Serkis.
Okay.
So he does like all the voices for every character, and they're all like really unique, and it's just really well done.
That's cool.
It's very good. I haven't listened to all of it. I just saw like clips on YouTube, but yeah. He's clearly passionate about Lord of the Rings. Man knows his stuff. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that passion will mean that it will turn out well and it'll be faithful to the source material. But that's the thing. It's
what is the source material? That's what I wanted to know, because
exactly.
I've never read the Silmarillion, which I think is what they based the new show on to some degree. But that Amazon show was trash, like absolute
it
garbage.
Feels like it's being like, I don't like to be that guy who sees source material as a holy text, because I think that's silly, right? I don't think that having, like, when someone adapts a thing from a book or anything, it's not like you're reading the Bible, right? It's a book. It's a fantasy. They made it up. You're making something up. Your translation of that text is going to be different from someone else, and your vision is going to be different. And I don't think it needs to be a 1-for-1. But at the same time,
what's the original material for this one, though? That's
exactly. You're now just basically making fan fiction for Lord of the Rings, and that is, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, it's because it's high production, very high production fan fiction.
Yeah. It's
for a person that no longer is alive.
Well, also, so here's my problem with it, and I think it specifically for Tolkien stuff, because Tolkien is such a crazy writer in terms of like the fantasy research he did for everything, and the languages he built, and like he's got songs and poems throughout his books that you're like, other books don't do all this stuff. Like, they'll write a song, but they're not going to come up with a language to write the song in.
He laid a very good foundation.
Yes. And so having somebody else trying to pick up and add on to that, it never feels like it's going to fit in properly, because how could it? You're trying to compete with some dude that was like obsessed with this craft and this world and had ties and was a linguist, and all this other stuff. And so I can buy it for other IPs and genres where people can more easily understand the world and add on to it and work within it. But Lord of the Rings is tricky, man. Like, you gotta, there's so many components you gotta get perfect for it to feel like it fits. Right. And on top of that, I love Golum as a side character. I don't think I want to watch a thing about Golum as a main character, though. I think it's going to be like the Joker movie to a degree.
Well, I think it was Strider. It'll be Aragorn.
Is it?
Yeah. So it'll be he's looking for Golum.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought it was, but I could be wrong.
Okay. I haven't read up on it. But it is called Golum, right?
I don't know.
Something.
Something like the search for Golem or something.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll
man.
see.
Yeah, I would rather somebody just make something new. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I watched, for a change of pace in terms of like film and stuff, because we always do action or fantasy or whatever. I watched a movie called Portrait. This came from that list I said last time about the 300 most top-rated movies on Rotten Tomatoes or something.
Yeah.
I was just kind of going down it and picking things that I thought were interesting, but it's called Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Incredible. It was like, it's about basically a portrait artist in like the 1700s. It's a period piece. And
all right, Google, that's creepy. I put POR into the search and it put Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Stop listening to our conversation, Google. That's creepy. I didn't even say it. Just POR and it just popped up.
I can't believe it didn't bring up your porn searches. Like that is the weirder thing about that.
God damn it, level
you
cap.
type in POR and it's like, would you like the usual, Matt?
Would you like the usual, Goodman?
So that one was really good. It's like a love story, but in the 1700s between a portrait artist. It's about two women and sort of that being forbidden, taboo in that time.
Right.
But man, is it well acted. It was just like incredible. And I was just,
nice.
Yeah, I'm not disappointed with this list so far. I'm like, holy crap, there's some heavy hitters on here.
You love to hear it. And that's a recent movie too, 2019. So it's not that long ago.
Yeah.
5 years, but God, doesn't that hurt when you start hearing things like 2017? You're like, oh, that's not that. Wait a second. Math. It's been 8 years, 7 years.
I know. People being born now, dude. It's like, if you say anything before 2000, it's like, you mean the before times? It's like
before times.
It really is the before times, though. I mean, really, the internet didn't get going till like 2000, until it started picking up some pace.
We somehow lived in a world where there was no internet. Isn't that crazy?
I know. I talk about it sometimes to the youngins, and they're like,
"Yeah, we had to do this thing called go outside and play." It was weird.
Do you remember looking up things with the card catalog in libraries?
I didn't really actually do that too much, no, because I in elementary school is when computers were starting to like actually be used. I remember having to learn how to type on a computer, and like so things were starting. We did learn how to do that, to like catalog and go to like find the books and stuff like that, but it wasn't as necessary.
Yeah. God, did book reports suck back in the day or what?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Oof, they were writing things out with pencil and then having to like post-it mark stuff in pages and like it's the worst.
Remember they said that cursive was going to be required throughout entire life.
Yeah, do they even teach cursive? It? I think they just teach your name now or something like that.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
for your signature.
Yeah, just so you can like sign your name, but otherwise you're like, why would I ever learn this? Oh my God, dude. I mean, did you see it came out today, right? Like 30 minutes before we started recording this podcast, but this would be Monday for people listening on Wednesday. But ChatGPT or OpenAI rather showed off their latest app for GPT-4. Oh, I forgot what it's called, but
that's why you mentioned the bots are going to take over the world.
It is creepy, dude. It's getting to a point where I want to believe that it's more limited than we think it's going to be, like, because it makes me feel safe knowing that AI isn't going to do everything we can do in the next 5 years. But watching some of this stuff come out of OpenAI, where their new app, they're just talking to it like a person, and it's responding to them like a person, and it's not messing up. It's not doing weird things or saying weird stuff or interpreting things incorrectly. It's just, it knows what's up. And it's not making me feel good, Matt. It's making me really creeped out. And I think like what we're doing right now, we're going to be replaced by AI, and there's going to be more entertaining.
People will just watch bots talk to each other.
Yeah, because they're going to be more entertaining.
Potentially, yeah, they can, because they'll have a wider knowledge base to reference. right?
Yeah.
We're limited by like what we know, right? But if an AI knows everything and they can just pull stuff out of nowhere,
yeah, if you could feed it. So like I've already got hours of your voice on recording, and I have done this in the past where I've sent you snippets of you saying stuff that's not you saying stuff, and that's pretty
creepy
straightforward and simple. But with this stuff here, you could give it your persona based on like podcast recordings and like probably have it tell jokes in your style, like the kind of jokes that you would make. It's getting really, really wild. And
I'm already getting there's already YouTube ads that are AI generated. They look like a person and they talk like that, but then you like watch it a little bit longer, like, wait, that's not actually a person. It's creepy.
I've been seeing some behind the scenes stuff of especially things that are on YouTube where I think there's a lot more AI content out there than you realize.
Probably.
On YouTube, it's getting freaky. I think the next 5 to 10 years of progress are like, I mean, 10 years down the road, I have no idea what the tech world is going to look like. It could be 100%
they just be AI
different.
assistants, and it might be lovely. It's like, oh hey, my AI's name's Sam, so be like, Sam, could you put eggs on the grocery list? And then Sam will be like, would you like 2 dozens or 1? Be like, you know what, we're gonna have just 1 this time. He'd be like, very well, very, very good. Stuff like that. Like that'd be cool.
I'm down with that. That sounds cool. Except that also it's going to take every person's job in like anything that involves computers.
We just have to then allow for those people to find other ways to make a living somehow. Definitely not going to become a problem at all.
No,
not an issue.
Well,
not an issue.
Fortunately, Matt, the world and people are really good at adapting the economy and laws and rules to support.
Yep.
That kind of stuff.
It's going to be intense.
It's going to get bad before it gets worse. I know that much. If human history has taught me anything, it's going to get bad before it gets better. We're going to be like, look at this new technology. Also, how do we redesign? We'll have to have AI redesign the economy for us. Because
there we go.
We won't know how to. We'll be like, nobody has anything to do anymore. So what should we do?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully leisurely stuff, art and things like that. But I don't know. This could be the beginnings of the end.
Yeah. Well, Matthew brings up a point in chat right now, which is that, it's going to be the people who know how to work with AI. That'll be your job, right? Is like, hey, can you program the AI to do?
I mean,
there'll
still need to be people that can actually program, because if they can't program and then something goes horribly wrong, then now you're left with a society that doesn't know how to manage the AI and ripperino.
Yeah, there was a good Star Trek episode about that where they find this planet that's cloaked. And the
entire planet is cloaked.
Yeah, because their technology is so advanced, right? So they find this planet that's cloaked, and they find these people on the planet, and they're all really stupid. They don't know anything. Well, they're not super dumb. They just don't know anything about technology. Yet their tech is way better than anybody else, and it's because they just invented super AI that just did everything they needed. And eventually the AI starts breaking down and doesn't know how to maintain itself, and so they have to call on the Enterprise or whatever for help. But I thought that was an interesting narrative, because
that's where I was going with that. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
they're
literally
taking the same thing, and they're like, you're just going to become too reliant on it. Nobody's going to understand any of the fundamental tech behind it, and then we'll be screwed when it breaks. I mean, we're already in that position where we've become super reliant on tech for so many things without a good backbone for its failure, If we lose power for a week,
what's 3 times 3? All right, I know what it is, but let me just type it into my my calculator real fast.
Yeah.
Do you ever do that where you're like, I know the answer, but for some reason I'm like, I have to verify?
Yeah, for sure. For anything that's like calculating prices or stuff, you're like, I should just really double check. Yeah. I'm happy to see that they are still teaching basic math in kindergarten. My son brings home his homework, and I'm like, all right, good.
Exactly. As we were just saying, education will still be incredibly important. We're not going to be able to just all completely rely on it, but the next 10, like as you said, the next 10 years is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it's nobody knows what it's going to be. We just know it's going to be different, and probably in a very big way.
Yep.
That's a good message to leave people with. We could continue this conversation in the post-podcast discussion that we do for our Patreon members who subscribe to the Patreon. There's a link for that in the video or podcast description. If you want to support the podcast more, you can check us out there. Otherwise, just tell your friends about this amazing podcast. Leave us a like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And Matt will leave you here with some important life advice.
So my important life advice is for a select few people in particular. Know who you are. You're actually giant corporations. So your image means a lot in this industry. And I think a lot of you forget that. And so if there's something that you're going to be doing for short-term gains, like, maybe, PSN accounts or reviews, maybe pump the brakes a little bit and think about it, because eventually that information will come out and people will know about it. And then your image will be tarnished, and that could actually affect your long-term gains. So, just be careful out there, guys. That's all I'm saying.
It's good advice.
You're welcome.
For the CEOs out there listening to the podcast.
They're like, we've made more money than you'll ever make if you lived 1,000 years, boy, sit down.
Yeah. CEOs don't listen to podcasts. They're like,
no, I know.
Podcasts listen to us.
I'll admit, Level Cap, I didn't really have a lot of advice. It's hard coming up with advice every week. I'm trying my best out here.
We appreciate it, Matt. If any of you are CEOs or become CEOs, just take that to heart. The image of your company, or you know what, maybe we can relate it to the personal life too, right? Short-term gains in your personal life versus your long-term image.
That's a good twist. Yeah, there you go. Think long-term.
Yeah, keep that in mind. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Bye.